Anita smiled as she saw a strange expression come over him as he crouched at her feet. He froze in position on the floor on all fours with a silly grin of embarrassment on his face as his bowels loosed themselves again. This time, however, she knew his stools wouldn't have any hardness to them at all. He would be filling his diaper uncontrollably with the pudding-like poop of early infancy. It would be days before the first day's 400 mg dose of Colace wore off. Of course, the diet of purred vegetables and fruits hadn't helped make his stools any firmer. Anita decided that she would taper the dosage down to 300 mg on the second day, 200 mg the third day, and ending with 100 mg on the fourth and fifth days. By that time, his muscles would have lost their tonus and he would be too uncontrolled to even think about using a toilet to relieve himself. He was too small to sit on a toddler's potty chair in any case. Diapers were the only appropriate venue for his poop now. Once she had removed all the meats from his diet and put him on a strict regimen of vegetables and fruit, his stools would be so soft that laxatives would be unnecessary. The baby formula and food would keep him as regular and uncontrolled as the merest infant, and he would slip into diaper dependency without a whimper of realization of what had happened. The women at the daycare would inevitably treat him like the infant he had become. Howard suddenly woke from his daze and turned his head up to see Anita smiling at what he had done. All the elements fell into place for Howard. He wasn't a man. He was a baby. Only babies crawl on the floor on their hands and knees and poop in their didies. He compared his hand to her foot and saw the vast disparity between their sizes. Her knees loomed over him like the pillars of a tall building. Her ankles were just below his eye height. When he looked up at her smiling face, so looked like she was hundreds of feet away. Her shoes were the only things about her that were lower than him. He reached out with his hand to touch the point of her shoe and saw that it now dwarfed his hand. He was tiny compared to her huge body. He felt small and insignificant in the presence of Anita. Howard glanced back up at her timidly and was awed by how her appearance had changed. She didn't look like the cowed, spineless woman he had married. She looked so confident and sure of herself. The sound of her voice radiated a sense of direction and conviction every time she spoke. How could he have ever thought that he was good enough to give her orders? He was only an irrelevant nothing compared to the goddess who sat enthroned in front of him. Howard felt as if his ego was dwindling to match his size. Howard did the only rational thing he could under the circumstances. He began to cry. Anita listened to the keening wail of the infant at her feet with a sense of satisfaction. Howard hadn't even tried to tell her that he had messed in his diapers. He had merely screwed up his face and began crying like an infant. She wouldn't have any more trouble with him. Anita let him cry a little more and then picked him up and carried him to the nursery. He never noticed when she put him on the changing table and cleaned his bottom. Howard continued to cry miserably until Anita bent down and put her lips to the baby's soft skin of his tummy. Then she blew a labial fricative on stomach. Howard giggled in response. She blew again and was pleased to see that he was enjoying her attentions. He calmed down and let her unfasten his diaper without answer, then giggled as she wiped his messy bottom and laid him back on a clean diaper. Anita gently spread a protective layer of petroleum jelly on his bottom, then held up his tiny genitals to coat them as well. Howard didn't know what to make of the sensations he was feeling. He laid on the changing pad looking up at Anita helplessly while she smiled with ingratiating amusement and manipulated him between her greased fingers. A funny feeling ran up his spine from the area of his crotch as she worked the lubricant into the skin of his penis. A sense of urgency struck Howard as if he was going to orgasm any moment. He kicked his legs in nervous excitement and rocked his pelvis on the pad. All it would take is a few seconds more of stimulation and he would explode. Anita patted him condescendingly on his leg and turned away for a moment to get the baby powder. She turned back to him and sprinkled the sweet-smelling power all over his crotch, then set the bottle down and took the soles of his feet in either hand. She playfully spread his legs and lifted them high in the air until his bottom was completely free of the changing pad. Howard was so excited that he couldn't contain himself any longer. All at once, he orgasmed. At least he thought it was an orgasm until he saw the yellow fountain arc through the air and run down the front of Anita's blouse. Anita did a double take of surprise and said in exasperation, "Oh, Howard. How could you? Look at what you've done to me. You've peed all over my new blouse." Howard wanted to feel sorry for what he had done to her, but the sight of her covered in his pee made him laugh uncontrollably. The abdominal contractions caused by his laughter loosed his bladder again, and another arc of urine sprang forth to soak the changing pad and side of the dresser. For some reason, Howard felt his latest accident had been inevitable. He giggled uncontrollably as Anita shook her head in maternal forbearance and pulled the clean diaper up between his legs to catch the jets of pee that continued to spurt out of his tiny penis. The stream of urine seemed endless. He couldn't stop. He chortled helplessly, rocking from side to side in convulsions of laughter while Anita patiently held the diaper in place. "You little Dickens," she laughed tolerantly as she waited for him to stop peeing. "I should have expected something like this from you. Look at you. You think that peeing on Mommy is hysterical? Well, now it's official. You've christened me as your mommy." She leaned over and kissed him on the forehead ceremonially, then she said in a parody of her marriage vows, "I accept the position. I promise to love, pamper and watch over you, in sickness and in health, whether your didies are clean and dry or wet and messy, for all the days of your life. And you, Howie? Do you take me as your mommy, to love, adore and obey, in didies and in onuses, promise to nurse on your BABA, eat the baby food that mommy feeds you and play quietly in your crib or playpen with your ducky, your blankie while sucking on your binky? Say GAA. Howard giggled again at her ridiculous joke and squealed a loud gar of feigned agreement. Anita nodded and said in mock solemnity, "Then by the power you vested in me when you granted me guardianship over you with your unlimited power of attorney, I declare myself to be your mommy and designate you to be my baby, till death do us part." Anita smiled broadly at her joke and said, "There, it's official for the both of us. You're mommy's little baby now." Howard's giggles subsided with his pee and he lay quietly as Anita took another disposable and dabbed the wet spots on her blouse before sopping up the puddle of his pee on the pad with the spare diaper. Then she tossed the wet diapers in the dirty diaper pail and took another diaper from the stack to re-diaper him. This time, she crossed his legs at the ankles and held them up with one hand to keep him from peeing on her while she slid the fresh diaper under his bottom. Anita worked quickly, tugging the diaper up between his legs and taping it firmly about his waist. Anita stopped for a moment and examined her work with the light of maternal love in her eyes. The thick nighttime diaper bulged out prominently from his groin, hiding the remnants of his manhood innocently beneath the sexless white cover and promising that whatever mess he made would be safely contained within its soft absorbent fill. The padding of the diaper was so full that Howard's legs were pushed apart and spread them akimbo. Anita was so taken with the sight of the angelic infant that lay before her that she immediately forgave him for peeing on her and began playing with him again. She took the heels of his feet in her hands again, this time secure in the knowledge that she was protected from his infantile lack of control, and lifted them in the air. Anita brought his heels together and separated them repeatedly with a grin of merriment on her face. She bent down to nuzzle her nose against the round bulge of his padded crotch and inhaled the clean sweet perfume of his diaper. When she brought his legs together again, the velvety baby skin of his inner thighs pressed coolly against her cheeks. Little Howie's skin was so soft, it felt like the wings of an angel were brushing against her face. He smelled heavenly. It struck her that the helpless little creature that lay before her had nothing to do with her former husband. All of Howard's sins had been washed away with his transformation into infancy. This was an innocent little baby who depended on her to take care of him. Then she straightened, picked him up from the pad and held him next to her breast for a few minutes while she cuddled him lovingly. He was so small that she could cradle his entire bottom in one hand. She smiled down at him maternally as she saw the tiny stubby fingers of his little hand work their way up her damp blouse and lock themselves in a fold of the fabric for reassurance. Anita shifted her other hand from his back to his head and stroked his scant fine hair affectionately as she hummed a wordless lullaby. After a while, she took him over to the oaken rocking chair in the corner of the nursery and sat with him, nestled him in her arm. It only took 15 minutes of rocking in her arms to make him fall into a sound asleep. Anita got up quietly from the rocking chair and gently laid him in his crib. She covered him with his blankie, then bent over and blessed him a featherlight kiss on the top of his nearly hairless head to ensure sweet dreams for him in the night.